Ever wondered how scientists can study something like, the surface of another planet or
Yeah.
like an ancient artifact, all from like miles away?
It is pretty incredible when you think about it.
Yeah, it's not like they can just like take a sample and pop it under a microscope.
Right.
So how do they do it?
The answer involves a bit of, well, you could call it microscopic demolition.
Microscopic demolition, huh? Sounds intriguing. And that's what we're diving deep into today.
Exactly. We're talking about ion impacts and sputtering phenomena.
And we're basing this deep dive on the work of Birger Emmoth and his, 1979 doctoral dissertation. Quite the deep dive.
It's fascinating stuff. Emmoth's work really broke ground on this phenomena, and it's surprisingly relevant to so many things around us.
See, that's what gets me excited. It's happening at this almost unimaginably tiny scale, at the atomic level. But it has these huge implications for, well, everything. I mean, we're talking about understanding the cosmos, building better technology.
It's pretty remarkable.
Okay, so before we get too far ahead of ourselves, can you give us a crash course on ion impacts? Like for those of us who haven't spent much time, smashing atoms together, what's the basic idea?
Sure. So in the simplest terms, picture an ion. And an ion is really just an atom with an electric charge.
Okay, so far so good.
And this ion, it's slamming into a solid surface at an incredible speed.
Slamming. I like it.
It's kind of like a microscopic game of billiards,
Okay, I can picture that.
where that incoming ion, it sets off this whole chain reaction of collisions, and it's colliding with the atoms within that material.
Okay, so it's not just one and done. It's causing this whole cascade of collisions.
Exactly.
Wild. And all of this bumping around at the atomic level, that's what leads to sputtering.
You got it. Each one of those collisions, it transfers a bit of energy, right?
Makes sense. Energy's got to go somewhere.
Right. So if an atom that's near the surface of that material, if it gets hit just right and it receives enough energy from those collisions, it basically breaks free. It gets ejected, essentially. And that, my friend, is sputtering in action.
So each ion impact is like a tiny little explosion of atoms.
In a way, yeah.
No wonder they call it sputtering. It's like, I don't know why, but I always think of that volcanic kind of pizza-looking moon of Jupiter.
Io.
Yeah, Io.
Ah, interesting connection. And, what's fascinating about Io is that its surface is actually surprisingly smooth, despite all that volcanic activity.
That's right. It's like it has really good skincare or something.
Well, scientists actually think that it's the constant bombardment from ions coming from Jupiter. It's essentially blasting away any rough edges, smoothing things out.
Like a cosmic sandblasting or something.
Yeah, exactly.
So this is happening all around us, really.
All the time.
Wow. But in Emma's case, he wasn't studying planets, right? He was doing this really meticulous lab work, trying to understand the fundamental physics at play here.
You got it. He was really interested in finding ways to study and actually quantify this process. For example, figuring out how many atoms are ejected for each incoming ion.
How do you even begin to measure something like that?
Well, that's where things get really clever. But it's a crucial metric. It's called the sputtering yield.
Sputtering yield. Okay, so a high yield, that means you're getting a lot of bang for your ion buck.
Exactly. A high sputtering yield means you're getting a lot of ejected atoms for each ion that hits the surface. And that's important information for all sorts of reasons.
I bet. Like, what can you actually do with that information? So we've gone from, like, ancient artifacts to smartphones, all thanks to our ability to, control these microscopic collisions. But Emmoth didn't stop at just trying to describe and, quantify sputtering. He wanted to dig deeper, right, into the nuances of how this all actually works.
Absolutely. He was really interested in the mechanics of it all.
The mechanics. Okay, so what did he find?
Well, one of his key discoveries was that it's not just about the energy of the incoming ion.
Okay, so there's more to it than just, like, how hard they're hitting.
Right. The angle of impact.
Yeah.
That plays a really crucial role in how much sputtering actually happens.
Wait, really? The angle? So it's like, I don't know, it's like playing pool, but on a table that's tilted or something?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. You're going to get different results depending on how you hit that cue ball. Same idea here.
Wild. So what did he find? Like, what happens when you change the angle?
Well, even a slight change, even just a tiny change to the angle of impact, that can drastically change the sputtering yield.
Okay, so how many atoms are getting blasted off?
Right. But also the direction those atoms are ejected.
Wow. Okay, that makes sense. But, I mean, how do you even study something like that in the lab? It's happening on such a tiny scale. It's atoms.
It's pretty incredible, the methods he came up with.
What did he do?
Well, for one, he used light,
A light.
Yeah, light.
Yeah.
To measure sputtering yields.
Okay, now you've lost me. How can you use something like light to study atoms being, blasted off a surface?
Okay, so remember how we were talking about collisions and how those collisions transfer energy?
Yeah.
Some of that energy, it actually gets transferred to the ejected atoms themselves.
Okay, so the atoms that are getting blasted off.
Exactly. And that bumps those atoms up to what we call an excited state.
Excited state. So they're like, what? Buzzing with extra energy?
Exactly. They're ready to release that extra energy.
Yeah.
And they do that by releasing it as light.
So they calm down by, like, glowing or something?
Kind of. Like,
Yeah.
you know how Firefly lights up? It's that kind of thing.
Okay, I can kind of picture it.
So here's the key, right? When those atoms that are in that excited state, when they go back to their normal state, they release that extra energy as light.
Okay, that makes sense. But how does that help you measure anything?
Well, because by analyzing that light, the light emitted during sputtering, Emmoth could actually tell which types of atoms were being ejected
Yeah.
and how many of them there were.
Really? Just from the light?
Yep. Think of it like, okay, you know how each color in a rainbow represents a different wavelength of light?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that. He was analyzing the spectrum of light emitted by those excited atoms. And the thing is, each element, every element on the periodic table, it has its own unique spectral fingerprint.
So he's like, what, fingerprinting atoms with light?
Exactly.
That's incredible. Okay, so that's one method. He used light, but he didn't just rely on light, did he? What was it you were saying about collector measurements?
Oh, right. Yeah, so that's another clever method that Emmoth used.
Lay it on me.
All right, so he devised this really ingenious way to basically map out where these atoms were going. You know, what direction were these sputtered atoms actually flying off in?
Okay. How'd he do that?
He used this specially designed collector, basically placed it all around the target materials.
Surrounding it?
Yeah. And this collector would capture any atoms that were, ejected.
So it's like he's catching them in the act.
Exactly.
Smart.
And by looking at how the atoms were, distributed on the collector, he could glean even more insights into the mechanics of all of this. Like how does that angle of impact actually influence the whole sputtering process?
It's like analyzing the splatter pattern, but on an atomic level.
Yeah, exactly. And all of this, this deeper understanding of sputtering, it's not just some abstract scientific thing. It has real-world applications.
Okay, good. Because I was wondering about that. Like, how does all this translate into something, tangible, something that benefits us in everyday life? So it's giving our tools like a fighting chance in this microscopic battle against, just daily use.
Exactly.
I'm seeing a pattern here. It's all about precision and control, but on this incredibly tiny scale.
It really is.
Are there any other surprising applications where this level of understanding of sputtering is really making a difference?
Oh, absolutely. And this one might be the most exciting application yet. Fusion energy.
Fusion energy. Oh, right. Yeah. The holy grail of energy sources, right?
That's the one.
Clean, limitless power. Sign me up. But I'll be honest, I'm a bit fuzzy on the details. How does sputtering play into all of this?
Okay, so inside a fusion reactor, you're essentially trying to recreate the conditions that you'd find at the core of a star.
Casual. No big deal.
Right. Incredibly high temperatures, intense pressures.
Yeah.
And all of that intense energy, it means that the walls of the reactor, they're being bombarded by high energy particles, including, you guessed it, ions.
Ah, okay. So it's like a controlled version of that cosmic sandblasting we were talking about earlier, but, cranked up to 11.
Exactly. Controlled chaos, really.
Yeah.
And to build a reactor that can actually withstand those conditions, you need materials that aren't going to erode away too quickly under that constant bombardment.
That makes sense, because if the reactor falls apart, fusion probably isn't going to work out too well.
Right. And that's where sputtering comes in. Yeah. We need to understand, really deeply understand how sputtering works, how different materials are going to hold up to that kind of abuse at those temperatures and energy levels.
It's like designing armor, but for a microscopic war zone.
Exactly.
Wow. So Emmoth's work on sputtering, it's not just about ancient artifacts or even, smartphones. It's potentially laying the groundwork for a future powered by fusion energy.
It is. Pretty amazing when you think about it that way. His research into this, seemingly obscure atomic phenomenon, it could end up helping us unlock one of the biggest challenges we're facing.
That's mind-boggling. I mean, we started with ions colliding with atoms, and now we're talking about clean energy in the future of, everything.
It really highlights how important fundamental research is.
Totally. You never know where it's going to lead.
You don't. It's a testament to that scientific curiosity, just exploring the world around us, even if it seems small, even if it seems insignificant.
Because even something as seemingly simple as an ion colliding with an atom, it can lead to these incredible breakthroughs and a deeper understanding of how our universe works.
Exactly.
I have to say, I'm feeling pretty inspired right now.
Me too.
I think next time I pick up my phone or, walk past a solar panel, I'm going to have a whole new appreciation for the, intricate dance of atoms that made all of that possible.
It really is remarkable.
All thanks to our understanding of sputtering. Who knew, right? Well, that's it for this deep dive into the fascinating world of ion impacts and sputtering phenomena. Big thanks to Birger Emmoth and his groundbreaking work, and to you for breaking it all down for us. Until next time, keep those brains buzzing.